Hey folks, this is David McCree, CPA, the Nonprofit Tax Guy. Today I want to talk to you about whether you should request an extension of time to file your Form 990, even if you don't think you're going to need more time to file. You know, it's long been thought that requesting an extension reflects poorly on your organization or that it increases your chances of an audit. And in the 20 years I've been doing this, I have not seen any evidence of that at all. Many organizations, many excellent organizations request an extension every year. But many don't need it. So let's talk about what might be the advantages to filing for an extension, even if you don't need one. The IRS has recently made some changes to the way they process Form 990, 990EZ, and 990PF. And this was on one of their exempt organization email updates. As of January 8th, the IRS is returning Form 990 series returns filed on paper and rejecting electronically filed returns when they are incomplete or if they're the wrong return. So it used to be that if you filed an incomplete return or a return that wasn't signed properly, the IRS would just send you a letter and say, hey, you forgot to include Schedule A or Schedule B or whatever. Please send us the complete schedule that was missing within 30 days. Well, now they just flat out reject the return. If it's an electronic return, they reject it and you have to fix it and resubmit it. If it's a paper return, they actually mail it back to you with a letter saying, complete the return properly and send it back to us within 10 days. Okay, it used to be they would give you 30 days, now they give you 10 days. And this, of course, can be a problem because many small tax-exempt organizations, they don't even check their P.O. box every 10 days. Okay, so you could already be outside the allowed time period for responding by the time the president checks the P.O. box or opens the letter. And so then you're subjected to penalties. So if you file an extension, a protective extension, you can avoid this. All right, so let's look at an example. Let's say that you're a calendar year organization, your return is due May 15th, 2019, right? Let's say you file on May 15th and you forgot to attach a Schedule B and you didn't mark the box saying that a Schedule B wasn't required. So 2 weeks later, you get the return back with a demand that looks something like this. We're returning your Form 990 for the tax period above. We can't process it until we have all the required information. Resubmit a complete and accurate return and include the information described below. Your Schedule B is missing. In addition to providing the missing or incomplete information, you may want to include a reasonable cause explanation of why you didn't initially submit all the required information with your return. We may charge you a penalty if you fail to provide both the missing or incomplete information and a reasonable cause explanation. We don't consider your return filed or complete until we have all the information we need to process it. The date we receive a complete and accurate return is the date we consider your return filed. To avoid penalties, we must receive your complete and accurate return within 10 days of the date of this letter. Okay, and the language here isn't consistent exactly with what they have on their website, and we'll look at that in a second. But you see the problem here. You filed close to the due date. It was returned to you. Let's say that for whatever reason you didn't get this in time to respond within 10 days. Now you're in a penalty situation. Okay. If you had requested an extension before you filed, you'd have until November 15th, regardless of what this letter says, that you've got 10 days to respond. If you have an extension, then you've got it until the extended due date, until November 15th, to file this return, to fix it and get it filed before you're subject to penalties. So let's look at what it says on the IRS website. Let's look down here. It says to avoid penalties, send the corrected return and your reasonable cause statement within 10 days of the letter to the address on the top right of the letter. Okay, so it's telling you not only do you have to send the corrected return within 10 days, but you also have to send a reasonable cause statement within 10 days. Okay, if you recall on their letter, it just says we must receive your complete and accurate return within 10 days of the date of this letter. It doesn't say anything about the reasonable cause statement. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. So my new policy is, in most cases, to go ahead and request an extension for all of the Form 990 series returns. Okay, 990T, 990 EZ, 990PF, and Form 990. That way it gives me a buffer zone in case, you know, the IRS finds something wrong with one of the returns I file. Now this is where it behooves you to file a return electronically. First of all, you go through all the error checking of the software, assuming you're using professional software. If you're using some of the online software systems, I really have never used those. I'm not sure what type of error checking they have in those, right? So I'm not fully aware of how that works. But with professional tax software, there's error checking. So that's already something that's helpful to you. Now, it's still possible to screw it up. It is. You know, error checking isn't perfect yet. But that's a good reason to file electronically. So when should you file your extension? Well, I like to give my give the IRS enough time to process the extension so that if there's a problem with the extension, if I made some sort of a mistake on it, that they would notify me on that. So if it's a May 15th due date, I like to go ahead and request the extension maybe around the end of March. Or sometime, and I don't think you can file it too early, as long as it's after the year end of your, the tax year. I would file the extension before you file the return though. So even if you know you're going to file the return on time, I would still request an extension a month or so before I actually file the return. Should you file your extension on paper or should you file it electronically? Well, I always prefer the electronic filing. Now, it's still possible for the IRS to deny that they ever received your electronically filed extension, but as long as you have the submission ID number or whatever your tax software gives you, or if you use an online service to file your extension, you have evidence from that you filed an extension. If you file one on paper, don't even waste your time doing it on paper unless you're going to send it certified mail or through one of the private delivery services that has tracking, because paper just disappears into the ether, right? So make sure you have copies of the extension, copies of the certified mailing receipt showing the date you mailed it. Get a return receipt, send a transmittal letter and a stamped self-addressed envelope so that they can mark it received and send it back to you. I don't want to date this video particularly, but right now we just came out of a government shutdown. It's February 2019, and we don't know what's going to happen. We do know that the IRS is severely backed up right now. And even the IRS is advising you file your returns and your extensions electronically. So that's what I would advise right now: electronic extensions, and file an extension whether you think you're going to need it or not, and file it early enough so that you have a good buffer zone. Use your own judgment on a case-by-case basis, but that's my advice. And if I can help you further, go to my website, nonprofittaxguide.com, and click on Contact, and you'll find my contact information there. Good luck this filing season.